Good morning, FYCE class. This is Mr. Sala. Today, I'm going to go over the money questions that you had posted, and I put together some links. So I will go over some of that information with you now. So the first group um, of questions you were looking at were college-related financial questions. And again, the best thing besides, say, individual scholarships to prevent you, again, I don't know if you can really get away from taking out a loan in today's environment unless your parents are completely helping you finance. But again, work study, the federal student loan. Yeah, so work study programs, federal student loans. But again, the big thing I wanted to make sure you mention is make sure you're only borrowing what you actually need. This is where some students get into situations where, say, they're getting, $8,000 for school and they really only need five. Well, now you might think that's free, easy money now, but again, you have to pay that back over time. So again, one way you can cut those costs is just make sure you're only borrowing what you need. And again, be realistic about where you are going. Um, I don't know why people would go out of state if they're not going to get, say, the same package from in-state schools. So again, it's kind of, again, your wants versus needs and being realistic about, the long end game as far as paying for school itself. Another strategy I know as far as saving for, again, you guys are into, but say for the future, is, there are plans, when you have your own children that you can start saving for them. I personally have a plan called a 529 college plan for each of my students where you can build up um, thousands of dollars, from the time they're born until they potentially start college. So that's something to think about as you go through this process and if you wanted to help out your children in the future. A lot of these questions really were about saving and investing. So right here, I posted this link for Fidelity and Schwab. Those are a couple of the larger investment houses out there. There's this one here specifically for this Roth IRA for kids. So again, if you have a job, you can open up an individual retirement account now that could help you in the future. Again, if you're starting it before you're 20, and you're not going to retire until your 60s or 70s, you've got 40 to 50 years of time for that money to just grow. And the more you contribute, obviously, the faster it's going to grow over time, especially if you're paying attention to the markets and educate yourself in that fashion. That's why, in college, say maybe taking a finance class would be to your benefit, if you don't understand a lot of some of these financial questions. Um, I posted this link here. This link is called The Visual Capitalist. So there's some information about markets and money, technology, but it's great visual information that you can at least start looking at some information to educate yourself on some finances. Let's go back here. Again, some of you, or you keep a lot of these questions were around, how much money or what percentage. Well, again, it's really going to come down to, again, your budget. When we get to the budget here, how much money you have left. Well, you should have a slot to where you can save, 5, 10%. You just got to start maybe a little slow now, small percentages, and then as you evaluate your budget over time, you would increase the amount that you're comfortable with. But the bottom line is when you have a budget, I would have a line item that is specific to saving for that rainy day fund. Um, Again, the best way to save and make money in college, you just got to get out and work, take a look at good summer programs, internships that pay. You just really got to kind of get after it to get some of that money that's out there. How much should you save in an emergency fund? Again, some financial experts over time recommend that you have at least, say, about 6 months of your salary. And I know that's not realistic for a lot of people, but that's what's recommended. And if you understand what's going on in the world today, and maybe your family's been impacted by um, parents not being able to work like they did in previous years, you could understand why that would be important during a time like this. What's the best type of account? Well, again, everybody's got to educate themselves. A lot of you are talking about savings accounts through a bank, but they pay very low interest. So again, you want to look at, if you're going to be saving for the long term, you do want to look at things like stocks. You want to look at individual retirement accounts in 401. So again, those IRAs, you can go and open them now versus say a 401k, which are offered through your employer. So as you start making your way into the world, you want to find out if, say, your employer offers these. Some companies will offer a match, right? If you put in $50 a month, they would, but you've got to ask those questions. This one came across yesterday. What happens in an emergency if an emergency uses most of your money into savings? Well, again, that's what life is. I mean, you're going to have your ups and downs, and hopefully it's not completely depleted. But again, you just got to rebuild it. You always want to have a backup. At least that's been my philosophy, these last 25 years. What is a safe amount of money to have for retirement? Again, that goes into your values, and again, your wants versus needs. How well you've kind of played, the game of life. If lead an extravagant lifestyle where you live in big houses and you have big toys and big expenses, you're obviously going to need a lot more money in retirement versus, somebody who is a little bit more frugal. And I do have this link here. There's pretty I just love this article. 96-year-old secretary quietly amasses a fortune and then donates 8.2 million upon her death. So I'll go ahead and let you go ahead and look at that if you choose to. But again, it's your wants versus needs and how frugal you live your life. All right, so credit and credit scores. A couple of the questions here. What are the pros and cons of having a credit card and the pros and cons of having a debit card? Remember, a debit card is just like having cash, so that's going to do nothing for your credit score. So the credit card, which leads into this next question, again, at this point in your life, I've mentioned when you turn 18, if you feel you are responsible enough and disciplined enough, you can go ahead and get a credit card. And then what you'd want to do each month is to charge a couple of things that you know you can pay off. So if you can charge, $50 to $60 a month, and then you pay, that's the key, you have to pay it off. You don't want to carry any debt because you're going to be paying high interest for those credit cards, especially because you're younger and you have really no extensive credit history. But if you want to build it, that's how you do it. Is again, a couple of things a month, fill up your gas tank a couple of times, and then pay it off. Got an article here for the through the government here. So let's go here. Federal Trade Commission. Again, there's 3 or 4 big credit agencies out there. and you can get an annual credit report by going through this government website, signing up when you're 18, and then you should be monitoring your credit at least annually, maybe even twice a year because of all the potential credit card fraud that is out there. So there's some good information here on this government website. All right, looking at here, family costs, elder care. So yesterday I mentioned that a child, is around about $250,000 to raise from birth through 17, 18 years. And what I've included here is there is a link here, CNN. So again, these numbers are a little backdated. This is a report from early 17 that used 2015 monies, but you get an idea and you can watch the little short clip there. And again, it does fluctuate depending on family's financial background and where they live in the country. But again, looking at an average, so again, I was pretty close in the estimate that I had heard previously. But again, that's quite a big chunk that you've got to account for, when you wind up creating the budget. So I'm going to finish off today looking at some of the questions you had on the budget, which is going to lead into your assignment early next week. And if you've looked at Teacherese, that's going to be a multi-day project that's going to carry some weight. It's going to have about 50 points on there, so that's why it's important to be as detailed as possible on those questions from the Google form. But again, one of the questions here is how should you know if a budget's working perfectly? Well, does anything work perfectly in life? No, you've got to interact with it. You've got to analyze it each month to, again, see what you could, cut out. Maybe your car went kaput and now you had to go buy a new car, so maybe now you have a car payment coming in to your budget. But again, everything is going back to the wants versus the needs. Yes, everybody would like a big house and a big car, but again, do you need it? And better yet, can you actually afford it? So again, really, budget's about trial and error, and again, staying detailed, disciplined, and just being realistic about the money coming in and coming out. What's a reasonable amount of debt to have? Well, again, that's going to be dependent on the income you're bringing in. If you have a decent income and you're going to buy a house, estimates range from 25 to say no more than 32% of your income should be going towards your house. So I've personally lived through the 2007-2008 housing crisis, and there were people that were considered house poor. They lived in a house that their debt was so overwhelming. And that was because the banks were giving out loans for people who could not afford those houses. And then when the bubble interest payments came, they couldn't afford it. So again, this is obviously going to be probably the biggest expense for most people. And again, you want to be able to be realistic about the type of house you're buying. This next one about fun stuff is clearly dependent on what you have left after you take care of your necessities, after you take care of all your items for the budget, right? So you're going to have house payment, something to do with car or transportation. Obviously, you're going to have a cell phone payment. You're going to have insurance in different forms. You have to have insurance on your car. Some of you might have to pay for medical insurance. Then you have to look at your utilities for where you're living, no matter apartment, townhouse, or house. So you're looking at things like your electric bill, your heating bill in some form, if it's natural gas, propane, water, garbage. We talked about savings as being part of your budget. So you've got to take care of those first before you're thinking about, those fun stuff. If you want to, buy a golf cart, scooter, a motorcycle, boat, etc. This was actually a great question that somebody finally came through with yesterday. Is again, how much should you or how much do you want to spend on a wedding? And again, too, it's wants versus needs. I know people who had budget out $30,000 to $40,000 on a wedding. That would never be me. But again, here's the big question: do you really want to start the rest of your life with somebody in debt? That's really the question. When you have these extravagant weddings, I don't know how you're going to make that money back. So unless someone else is paying for it, do you really want to start in debt? And again, wants versus needs. Then the last link here you might want to look at here is being in tune with your partner, with your financial goals. So that's the last article I have posted here that you might want to consider looking at. So 7 financial questions to ask your partner, before you start thinking about long-term commitment, especially since in most cases you're going to be merging your finances. So Monday we'll start the budget project and you'll have all the information you need then. Thank you and have a great day and a great weekend.